Hello and welcome to a very special video. My name is Freda and today patch 1.7 Hydra released. Alongside it, they also released a DLC for Hearthstone 4, which is mostly cosmetics and flavor. So before we jump into the actual analysis and talk about the features of the patch, let's just run through the DLC because it'll be very quick. So the DLC that they announced is what they talked about in the first dev diary regarding the patch and all that, with the music pack, the radio stuff, and the armor pack. We'll talk about the radio in the changes once we get into that, because there was a free change regarding the radio accompanying this patch. But first of all, let's look at what happened with, or what's happening with the DLC. So they have released the radio pack, which adds 35 new songs, supposedly. I'm not quite sure if some of them are old Hearthstone 2 and 3 tracks. However, I'm very happy about the new Hearthstone 2 and 3 tracks. I believe those are in the game for free, because I did see them in the radio myself. And as I say here, any older music packs that you have get added to the new radio system. All that is for free. Yeah, they add new songs specifically for the allies, the common tone, and the axes. The armor pack, which is quite exciting, adds 3D models for each one of the adds 3D models for Japanese, Italian, and German tanks. So this is the axis armor pack. This to me seems like there will at some point be an allied armor pack down the line, because currently there are no tank models for like the tank destroyers and such for the allies, while this armor pack does add tank destroyer, like unique tank destroyer models for each type of tank destroyer, and so on and so forth, as well as I believe self-propelled artillery and a host of other models. It's very great if you do love that kind of flavor. And that's basically it. The prices listed here are in Norwegian kroner, so they might not apply to you at all. Statistically speaking, they don't. But yeah, let's move in or go into the actual patch changes. So the major stuff that's happened is mostly under the hood. However, some stuff will be immediately noticeable and immediately very useful to you. First of all, the 64-bit change, a permanent change from 32-bit to 64-bit, which is happening to all Paradox titles nowadays. It will not be noticeable for most people, because I believe only something like 3% of the population still use 32-bit systems. However, what will be noticeable is the frontline change. The front lines here, if you look at them, this one is a standard front line assigned using the army group. You can see all the armies assigned here. Now, this gets kind of messy to look at visually. A way to fix that now, if I delete this, if you just want to assign a front line as an army group and only deal with the army groups, like you might want to do on the Eastern Front, where things get wide and things get messy and things change often. Hold shift, assign the front line, and the game still treats it as an army group consisting of multiple armies, but you don't even have to worry about that, because it all groups them visually under the army group and handles everything else under the hood. It's going to be immensely useful to newer players who don't want to micromanage too much. Additionally, another change which is going to be immensely useful to new players who get, from my experience, a major headache from the way frontlines work in this game. Let's assign the army group again. The major change is the way you can now move around the front line. So in the past, if you wanted to move, let's say, this blue front line a few tiles down here, you would have to move it on top of this one, and then you'd have to reduce this one down a couple of tiles here, so that they didn't overlap. However, now, with edit mode, right click and drag, and you actually move both of them at the same time. It's so useful. It's going to save so much headache, and I love that feature. Additionally, if you want to swap these front lines around, just click the arrows. If I want to redirect this blue army down here, they just got shifted down and the orange got shifted up. It's so simple, so intuitive, and I love it. One of the best changes Paradox has made to the base game, in my opinion, in recent times. That and fuel, of course. Now, speaking of fuel and man the guns changes, a lot of balance and reworks have been put into effect regarding the naval game. Most important of these are balances and changes to the convoys, but also to submarines, convoy raiding in effect, and also the way capital ships are treated, and so on and so forth. So the first and major one I want to talk about is the changes to submarines and convoy raiding. So convoys in the past were treated as, like, when you fought them, you either sunk them or you didn't, which would lead to situations where a major force, like a major raiding force, like a huge one, would completely destroy an enemy's convoys, while a smaller one... Now, to prevent this sort of binary change, they've added a system whereby any damage you do to convoys is tallied up at the end, and then dice rolls are made based on how much damage you do to see if any of the still existing convoys are sunk afterwards. So basically, even if you don't sink any convoys, you might get a couple of sinks at the end of the convoy combat. That's going to go a long way to make smaller raiding fleets more viable. Additionally, in terms of submarines, submarines have had their detection lowered across the board, mostly in regards to the detection when firing torpedoes. However, to compensate, all other ship classes have had their submarine detection increased. So submarines in general are easier to detect now if they're, you know, being rowdy, or if you have specialized equipment for it or doctrines for it. But submarines should now also be able to survive better, because they can in fact now fire while retreating. So even if your submarines are spotted, they will be retreating while still firing, which could in effect with good submarines still score hits on the enemy. So what you can do is you can set your submarines to only engage at low risk, which means they will try to run away if they're getting chased, but they might actually fire while trying to run away as well. They've also changed the way mine laying works a little bit. So if you add a mine layer module to a ship now, it will reduce its speed. It didn't do this in the past, and it made it very easy to just say, I want to make a jack of all trades submarine, for example, because the submarines were previously harder to detect and would also be able to lay mines. Now with decreased speed, they'll have a harder time running away, and with increased detectability, you kind of want to specialize. I think this is in general a good trade-off. Now also, in terms of convoy raiding, naval reports where convoys are not sunk and nothing else is damaged will no longer be counted. So gone are the days where you see like naval reports on the map and you click them and nothing really happened. If something is damaged, it'll still show up, but not if only a convoy is damaged. So you might think, you know, if something's damaged, shit pops up all over the place, right? Because they added the convoy damage. Nope, they fixed that like already. That's not going to be a problem. I believe it might have been a problem in the open beta. Now, moving away from the naval stuff. Actually, no. Before we move away from the naval stuff, there is one very important one, a change I fucking love. That is the reliability penalty for fire control modules has been changed. So when you added a fire control module to your ships, you would get no reliability penalty on the first module, and then it would increase dramatically for each module. So that essentially made it so that it really was not worth it to have anything except for Fire Control Module 1 or 0, whichever one, whatever it's called. The first one, which added no reliability penalty, So people never did that. Now it's been halved completely, so like cut in half, and that should increase the viability by a lot. Also, while having to turn this down, I accidentally showed you something I was going to wait to show you, but the radio system now has unique channels for you to listen to, so you can select all of them. Deselect some that you don't like. I was listening to the old Hearthstone 2 and 3 music. You can see here. But yeah, so let's return to the actual changes again. Another change to the convoys, which I also very much like, is that when you select, or when you create a trade route, let's say we have a trade route from here to Spain, and you want to escort those convoys to prevent them from being raided, you would have to essentially protect every ship that was on that trade route to get maximum effect. The way this has changed now is that you only need to protect the ships that are actually present in the zone that you are protecting. So if you want to have maximum efficiency when you select all the zones, nothing will have changed. But if you're only trying to protect them in one zone where you know the enemy is operating with raiders, then you only need to protect the ships that are in that zone presently. So it does not count any ships currently in this zone or this zone. And by ships I mean, of course, convoys. Another smaller change, which is very important for the simulation aspects of the game and realism and all that, historical representation, is that ships can now fire at each other, like capital ships can, and ships with larger guns can now fire at each other before the screens can actually engage anyone. So what this means is that carriers and battleships would now sometimes fire at each other and fire over the screens before the screens actually reach each other. In the past, the screens will always be the ones to first engage, while now you might have situations where the screens are fast enough to engage before the battleships can engage, but now sometimes, because of the larger guns with a larger range, carriers and battleships will engage much sooner. This means that you'll see more damage to your battleships and stuff, and we'll no longer only see damage to the screens. Of course, you could still get damage to your battleships and stuff, but that would usually be after the screens have engaged and the battleships get up, close. I think this is going to make it more viable to have larger ships in some patrol fleets and stuff, because then the patrol fleets might engage at first, and then the if the strike force doesn't reach the patrol fleet in time in order to actually engage the enemy, then the patrol fleet might still be able to inflict some casualties on the enemy. Let's say you have a patrol fleet of like 4 cruisers and a battleship, then they will be able to fire at the spotted enemy fleet before the spotted enemy fleet can really. It might also be able to facilitate some situations which we really haven't seen a lot of in the past, where you have battles similar to the Battle of Midway. The Battle of Midway, of course, is famous for being the first battle in which 2 ships engaged each other without being physically able to see each other. That being a carrier from the Japanese Navy and a carrier from the US Navy. So maybe that will be more of a thing now. Other than that, I don't really know if there's anything else I need to address. Nothing that really stands out. We talked about the front lines, we've talked about the changes to the naval game, we've talked about, did we talk about the way the AI has changed? It's not mostly under the hood, so I don't really know the specifics, but Paradox have been testing the AI, and they know that the Axis are winning every war now in this patch. So they tried to buff the Soviet Union's AI by making them make or defend a bit more sensibly. According to them, this will still result in the Soviet Union losing under most circumstances, but they will lose much slower and will inflict much higher casualties on the Germans. I believe that is it. So thank you so much for watching. I originally recorded this video once, which is kind of why I'm a bit confused about what I've covered and whatnot. But I recorded this once before we knew about the DLC, and I was like, maybe we'll have a cool DLC released. And you know, I'm not going to speculate because that's going to be stupid, because it's going to be revealed in a couple of hours. So then it was revealed 10 minutes later, and it was kind of disappointing in my opinion. I mean, some of you, this might be amazing, the armor packs and the music packs and stuff. To me, it doesn't really suit the way I play the game, and won't be that useful to me. But please let me know what you think about it in the comments down below. Either way, thank you for watching. And if you would like to reach me on social media or anything of the sort, you can find me on Twitch, Twitter, and Discord. Twitter and Discord are the best ways to reach me if you want to talk to me. Twitch, I'm not really actively streaming right now, but if you would like, you can give me a follow and keep abreast of when I'm actually going to be streaming. If you'd like to support me, you can support me on Patreon or use the humble affiliate links in many of my videos to buy the games I'm playing. If you do, you'll give me a small kickback and you will support charity. And that's about it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.